Welcome to our viewers. Thank you for joining us for our webinar today, Scalable Content Security for On-Prem Object Storage. Joining us today are George Pritchett, Director of Product Management at OpSWAT, and Sanjay Jagad, Senior Director of Product and Solutions at Cloudian. Welcome, George and Sanjay. With that, I will hand it over to Sanjay.
Thank you, Jen. So let's just quickly start. As I mentioned, right, we have a really exciting topic today, and exciting in the sense because data security is one of the hottest topics in the IT industry today. For various reasons, we are currently in a situation where a lot of people are working from home, and security and cybersecurity and data security has never been at the top of the mind for a lot of people. So today, in our agenda, we're going to talk a little bit about security and some of the parameters and the risk parameters associated with security and the challenges that we see from a lot of our customers. We'll cover a little bit about the Cloudian data protection offerings. You'll also see more details about the OpSWAT's data security offerings and how today Cloudian and OpSWAT solution works together and what are the benefits that you can expect out of it. At the end, definitely we'll take some Q&A. So really important topics and really good discussions. Looking forward to having that today. So just to set some context, right, there is no doubt today that data fuels the transformation of digital enterprises, right? We've seen, and there is a total agreement across the industry that the unstructured data growth is growing at a phenomenal rate, right? And that brings its own challenges. This data is coming from various new places and sensors and human-generated data, machine-generated data, clinical data, and business data, right? And this means that today the IT teams are faced with an undaunted task of managing this data. And this today, data powers the most innovative business, right? Today the CIOs are no longer just interested in managing the company's infrastructure. They are looking to contribute to the company's bottom line. But they have challenges, right? How do I manage this enormous growth of data? How do I bring flexibility into my IT infrastructure to be dynamic? How do I leverage the innovations happening in the cloud and bring those kind of technologies and operational practices into the on-prem? But the most important piece is whenever you have so much data, how do you manage, how do you secure, how do you protect it? And that's the tsunami that we are dealing with right now. We're calling it the data tsunami because that's the unprecedented challenges that are associated with the ITs today. And talking about challenges, right? One of the things that we see from a threat vectors perspective, right? Whenever you talk about security, there are two things. One is the internal threat vectors, right? And those are, as you probably most of you have known and seen, right? Those are probably some kind of accidental deletion of data, right? Or you have disgruntled rogue employees or malicious insiders who want to basically delete or at least mistreat the information and the data they have, right? There is evidence tampering when something has gone wrong. How do you make sure that, the data is, the evidence is tampered or removed so that there is no trails left? And those factors have been around for quite some time. But now, in today's world, it's just grown exponentially with everybody now working from home and global collaborations. These threat vectors have increased in terms of its potential impact. And this is also one factor that is also influencing is the external threat vectors. So, George, what do you see from those vectors in terms of all the data breaches that are happening out here?
Thank you much, Sanjay. I think the most important part is that we get a lot of information in, right? A lot of data coming in from different channels and so on. As Sanjay explained before, we have that data tsunami. And making sense out of all that data, that unstructured data, is troublesome. And I think the most important part is that the data breaches right now are mainly driven by hacking, malware, and so on. And I think one of the best examples is that in the Verizon data breach report for 2020, it's stated that 45% of the incidents are actually involving hacking, right? And out of those breaches, like 20% of them are driven by malware. Most important, like a third of those are actually ransomware. And I think this is the key part, right? The fact that ransomware is still so popular after all this, let's say, couple of years now, when it started to be on the rising, it's still super popular and actually it's very efficient. And there are like so many methods or like prevention mechanisms and detection mechanisms for ransomware, and it's still effective. That means that either we're not doing a very good job deploying solutions to prevent this kind of attacks, or there are multiple entry points and we're not covering all of them. We're relying on the main entry points for the data, but we're not looking at like all the different angles on how that data gets in our organization. And again, you cannot actually block all the traffic coming in. More and more organizations are moving away even from like air-gapped and offline environments to more cloud-based, multiple solutions being used, being cloud-based or on-prem. The important part is that data flow is important, right? You cannot actually block that one because you're going to affect the productivity of your users. So all this information is flowing, and you're not going to have a good visibility on like what is actually in data flow. If it's anything there malicious, it's a ransomware that's going to be deployed. It's sufficient only one user to be compromised, and then you can expand from there. Lateral movement is a classic way of getting in, and then you're going to have all your data compromised. And I think there are like a lot of examples using this kind of flow. Maybe Sanjay, you can share a few.
Yeah, I know, and I think you mentioned the Verizon one, but there are this nowadays. If you look at just open up the top headlines, and you'll see plenty of them. I think one of the most recent ones that is going around is the legal team and for some of these music artists who have been held ransom, right? And the challenge with this is, as you can see, right, there is so many different attacks that are going on. And as George, you mentioned, right, this is malware. This is some of the threats that are through hacking. And the exposure is continuously getting bigger and bigger, right? And the impact is also much bigger. It's not just the data breaches that happen, right? The ransomware, the people that are held for ransomware, but the side effects of that is those data assets are critical in many cases, right? Be it sensitive material, be it critical IP for our company perspective, or some critical records, and those compromise the business integrity. Those compromise the value of a business entity and the accountability from a different perspective when it comes to the name, the credibility, and the impact it takes on that particular business. And this is one of the reasons why a lot of these enterprises today are taking this very, very seriously and should take it very, very seriously. Right, we have seen this happen again and again, and the challenges are very simple, right? And in terms of thinking logically, right? We need to make sure that whenever you are doing any kind of data protection and security, that you are having the right access controls, right? Some of these attacks that are happening are because you'll see this, right? The buckets in the Amazon cloud were left open with everybody having access to those things because somebody did not set the right access controls on the data and records, right? They did not have the right govern the right user access, right? And there are policies, right? How do I maintain and comply with the legal requirements around GDPR for privacy, because I have to mask the personal identifier information. How do I align myself for HIPAA and the financial services regulations, be it through SEC 17 or some European equivalent around those pieces? This magnitude of these vectors and these challenges are dynamic, right? You have to constantly look at, and these challenges are, how do I protect from the alteration and the theft to ensure the data integrity? George, what do you see in your side when it comes to all these challenges?
I think we're seeing a lot of let's say our customers that are relying or like have a lot of segmentation, right? And they're relying on multiple solutions for each of the different entry points, and they don't have like consistent way of managing things, right? And sooner or later, things will fall between the cracks. And as you pointed out at the beginning, right at the beginning when you said that more and more people are moving, especially now in the current situation, to work from home, having like remote access, more companies are onboarding new solutions quickly to react to this new paradigm. And those are things that are not going to prioritize security first, right? And the fact that you don't have like a single pane of glass or like visibility and like what's your data flow, this is going to end up in more and more data breaches. And I think there was a very recent article where the biggest data breach is yet to happen, and it's going to happen this year. And this is actually one of the main reasons, right? We need to move fast. All organizations had to move super fast in the current conditions. They onboarded a lot of solutions, and they didn't do like, or didn't have the time actually to deliver the end-to-end security for those solutions either, right? Each solution that's bringing in, being cloud-based or on-prem, has its own security features if you want, but it's not going to offer you the end-to-end security functionality. And pretty much that's what we're discussing right now, how we can offer that one.
And you bring up a very good point, right? This is the biggest data breaches are still to happen. And what is, when you look at security, right, and data protection, it's basically a shared responsibility, right? You cannot just have one person or one team be saying that, okay, you take care of all the security. There are many vectors and there are many things that need to be done. The first piece of that component is protection of that data, making sure that, you have the availability and the resiliency on the data. So when you need it, it's available. How do you recover from that data in case there is an event? Second one is protecting the data through encryption so that you can at least mitigate some of those internal as well as external threats where people cannot delete it, or at least they cannot tamper with. Access controls, ensuring that you are compliant with all your access controls and you're regularly auditing it, and making sure that you're meeting all the requirements around regulatory and compliances, making sure that the infrastructure you have gives you the best data protection. That is the one component of it. The other side is data security, George.
Sure. I think the most important part, and I'm trying to reiterate this every time I have the ability to push it, visibility, right? You need to be aware what's the data flowing through your organization, regardless of the entry point, regardless on how that data is being managed or where it's being stored, right? And again, you have solutions, let's say, you have a dedicated team maybe for email security. However, you have a dedicated team, let's say, for storage. But storage is going to be, as Sanjay mentioned, is more focused on data protection, not necessarily what's in that data, right? And that's visibility functionality. It's going to give you a better understanding, like, is any sensitive information being stored? How is that being handled? Who's going to have access to it? Is there any intellectual property? Is that information being properly stored, right? And more important, like, is any malware being shared or stored in your organization? And again, out of the traffic, let's say you have like terabytes of traffic maybe on a daily basis, right? You're not going to have half of that as malicious data, but at the end of the day, it's sufficient to have only like kind of 1 kilobyte, like one single file to be malicious, to actually end up in the news the next day with a huge data breach. And that's the part that you need to have a better understanding, like what is going on in your infrastructure, what's the data that's being moved across, stored in your infrastructure and so on, right? But also, what if there's anything there that's malicious, if there's like sensitive information that you want to make sure that you're not going to violate any compliance regulation and things like that, or if there's any intellectual property that's going to go out of your organization, you're going to have like a huge data loss there as well.
Yeah, and there should be no doubt in anybody's mind that, data protection and security is a shared responsibility and is something that should be at the top of the agenda. Let's take a little bit of a detour and let's talk about the data protection and what Cloudian has to offer, and then we can jump into the ops what and then talk about our solution. So from a Cloudian perspective, right, when we talk about data protection, there are many factors that basically are factors that impact why customers choose Cloudian, right? There are some obvious ones from a storage and data management perspective. At Cloudian, just so that we are on the same page. If you already don't know this, we are basically an enterprise-grade software-defined object storage solution. And the basic principles of Cloudian's foundations are we are built on S3 APIs. We have native implementation of S3 APIs that gives us the highest S3 API compatibility. And the reason why this is very, very important is, as we talked about, right, the data is growing. The applications that use this data is growing. And you need to make sure that in this today's cloud-friendly world, you have a storage platform that offers the highest S3 API compatibility, because you want to make sure that your applications work seamlessly when they are working against a cloud-native object storage solution on your data center. You also want to make sure that the reason why people like Cloudian is we have the ability to offer file connectivity to applications that want to use object storage but cannot use it because they don't use S3 APIs yet. And the beauty of that solution is you're just not only offering file connectivity, but you're offering bimodal access. That means your files can be accessed as objects and objects can be accessed as files without having to worry about the compatibility. Whenever you talk about an on-prem object storage, where we're talking about bringing cloud infrastructure into your data center, the two single most criteria that are very important from a storage perspective is the ability to scale, right? And to do that infinitely, meaning that you can scale as your data grows and manage this growth of data. But people don't start with all that data at once, right? So you need to have the ability to start small and grow non-disruptively so that you can scale capacity and performance to meet your workloads need. And whenever you're having a scale-out platform, you need to make sure that your data management capabilities are at the granular level, right? Where you can have, because not all data is going to be same. At a bucket level, in a multi-tenant way, you should be able to say, this is how my storage is going to be used by this particular group of entities. This is how I'm going to manage it. This is where I'm going to enforce all my security policies, be it encryption, be it object lock for immutability, be it disaster recovery, where making sure that the data is always available. Or even if you want to make sure that I'm querying this data to the public cloud for various reasons, be it through DR or for just leveraging some cloud services, all those data management has to happen at a granular level. Immutability is very, very important if you're protecting against ransomware, because you want to make sure that nobody can alter your data or change your data, because ransomware means what? You have your data, someone goes and encrypts it, and now you cannot access it. So you want to prevent people from modifying your data, and in Worm, immutable object storage makes that happen. Cloudian is the only object storage that supports the S3 APIs for object lock. And the last thing is cost, right? Cost is significant. So these are all the different factors that dictate. The other reasons why it's very important when you're looking at security is the certifications, right? What kind of compliance certifications does the solution allow? Cloudian is the only solution out there that is certified for FIPS 140-2, common criteria, SEC 17A. We have the Financial Regulatory Authority, FINRA rule certifications. We have the German regulations where PS8AG and the Swiss regulations for making sure your data immutability and security is part of our infrastructure. Offering those compliance and meeting those compliance, be it through HIPAA, be it through PCI DDS, through all Worm as well as encryption, through access controls, logging, and making sure that there is audit trail for this are very, very crucial components to meet your compliance requirement. And Cloudian checks the box on all of those things. Talking about security and what Cloudian has to offer right now, so we offer a platform that offers the highest level of security solutions for an on-prem object storage solution. Right? You start talking about access controls and RBACs. We talked about Worm. We talked about APIs that allow you to, can be accessed through authentication. You have the network security through SSL, HTLS, and TLS support, audit logging. Cloudian can also do encryption of data, AES 256, with different ways of protecting and accessing your keys, right? Keys can be done and kept at the customer level, at the server level, integrating into external key manager. And the last is constant internal data validation, right? Where you now are going through all your data, making sure the integrity of the data is not compromised. All those things make this an ideal platform for protecting your data and securing your data. And talking about encryption, like I was saying, there are many different ways of doing it. One is the client-side encryption, because you want to make sure that you are protecting the data with encryption, but also having a master key that is in your control, so that if you want to rotate the keys and if you want to make sure that the keys are secure in an external key manager, you can do that. Right, many customers, many storage vendors will say, "Oh yeah, we do encryption by doing self-encrypting drives," but that's not the most secure way of doing it, right? You want to make sure the keys management and your policies around rotating your keys and integrating and controlling the keys is aligned with your industry standards. Server-side encryption, which basically the master key is generated per object and is kept, that's stored in the object's metadata. So we allow that to simplify the operations. And the last one is customer-provided keys. So the flexibility in the form of creating different encryption options that meet with your enterprise practices and regulations is very, very crucial. And lastly, when we talk about data immutability, when we talk about worm, there are many proprietary ways of doing it, right? Worm, first thing you want to do is make sure that it's aligned with the industry standards. If you're using an S3 API storage, you better support S3 APIs for object lock, because that's how worm is implemented, because that's what allows you to get the modes of operations, compliance, governance, right? And those are very, very important, right? Support for legal hold. You get alerts when something is like your clocks, because you're talking about a scale-out system. If your clocks are not synchronized, then you can run into issues, because now you can manipulate the system clock and be able to get around the immutability. All those factors come in, right? So when you are looking at someone saying, "Oh yeah, we do worm," make sure that you are asking the right questions, because this is a very crucial component of protecting your data. So, we talked about a lot of these pieces when it comes to protecting and data. And what does Cloudian bring to you is a platform, a complete storage and data management platform with robust security. And that's what makes it an ideal partner. That's what makes it an ideal component of this solution that we're talking about today with your OpsWAT team. So, George, that was on the storage side. What do you have on your data offerings from a security perspective?
Sure, thank you. I think, let's say like a quick introduction for Defender or like OpsWAT in general, right? We've been around for a while now, we're almost 20 years. I think the most important part, we built a solution used to be called Metascan, that's heavily used in the intelligence community around the world. So think about anyone in the IT space, certain organizations, being enterprise or country, certain organizations were using it to analyze files in their offline environment usually, right? And when we took this technology and wrap it in more and more products, if you want, solutions to address different entry points of data. And that morphed to what is right now Defender, right? And we have integrations for multiple use cases. We have from like a kiosk for almost all nuclear facilities in the US. We have a file upload solution where you actually process the files being uploaded in your web application. Analysis remained one of our biggest focus as well. But again, storage security, email security, and so on, all the entry points are coming in your data, or like all the data is coming through different entry points. We're trying to be there to analyze it and filter it out, right? So Defender became more of like, almost like a gateway for data, right? We're trying to filter as much as possible all the data coming in regardless of the data source. That's what made this partnership so great, because Cloudian sees all this data, right? Right before that data is being stored, or like before that data is made available to the users, we're actually able to like provide that additional layer of security on the data, what's actually in the data. And I think the most important part is that we are trying to look at that file, those files or that data from different angles, right? So like you take that file in the static environment, we're trying to provide you the full report on like what we actually see in that file, right? Is it something, it's malicious? And we do have like a multi-scanning functionality to scan to see, to get that almost 100% detection for all known malicious files, right? Is this file containing any embedded object that might drive malicious behavior? Is this file an executable an application and has some critical vulnerabilities in it? Does it contain any private information, PII, intellectual property, and so on, right? And those are the kind of things we're trying to look deep into the file and provide you like not just a report, but also maybe like a sanitized version of that file, a safe to consume copy of that file. So whenever we're looking at a file, it's very important for you to understand that it's not just like a thumbs up, thumbs down approach. We can actually offer you a safe to consume content, right? Safe to consume meaning we're going to remove embedded objects that might drive that malicious behavior, or we're going to redact the file. If there's any PI information in that, and they're not supposed to consume the data with PI information. They're not supposed to receive files that contain social security numbers or credit card numbers and so on. And redacting them, then you're not going to have a problem that you store them, let's say, credit card numbers, and you violate your PCI compliance. And the way we deliver this one is, as Sanjay mentioned, on Cloudian side, we build this platform, right? This is the Managed Defender core solution. Also, Managed Defender is the one that has all these additional modules, this technology stack, if you want. We're looking at those files and trying to provide you a full report on like what we're seeing, right? And we have like 6 main modules and a lot more different engines. Depending on the use case, depending on like what you want to do with the data, we can actually provide you like the end-to-end solution for you to have like a full report, right? Like for instance, you have a use case where you're sharing or like you're receiving only productivity files. Vulnerability is not necessarily the right focus there. But if you also have, I don't know, a share, or like your IT team is using like a repository for all your applications and so on, or you're delivering from, let's say, firmware updates and so on, vulnerability assessment is one of the topics you want to look at. And I think one of the most important parts is that, again, we're delivering these kind of technologies. And I want to focus on like 2 quick ones because these are the ones that I see a lot of traction recently in this use case, right? The most popular one is the mass scan module. And this is the multi-scanning solution I was talking about previously, right? We're able to package over 30 engines. We're like 36 right now, and we're trying to get more and more this year as well. So the entire idea is we're combining all the anti-malware engines you're aware of from like kind of top-tier vendors like McAfee, Sophos, vDefender, Avira, and so on. And we're trying to bring new AI-based engines, CrowdStrike being a great example there as well. So we're trying to package all technologies to have that end-to-end analysis solution from static malware analysis. So we have like feature-based heuristics, emulation, AI, and so on, right? And then you're going to have a clear answer from all these vendors, like what we're able to produce as, or like what is the result. Maybe not all of them are flagging, right? So that's the most important part in the multi-scanning solution. Each engine has its own mechanism, its own way to analyze the file. So whenever you're looking at like a file, let's say if you have like 30 engines, maybe 5 of them is going to flag it as malicious. Maybe it's not going to be even the one that you're aware of, your enterprise McAfee solution. Maybe it's going to be some vendors you never heard of, right? But the important part, we're trying to combine vendors that are geolocation distributed worldwide. So there are vendors that are going to respond way quicker to target attacks for a particular market, right? So we have vendors from all around the world, being from Korea, Japan, US, Europe, and so on. So we're trying to have a full coverage for you to be able to understand not just, okay, it's a new malicious file, but also who's be able to detect it, how, and what's actually the result there as well. And the one that actually got the most traction for us in the last couple of years is actually Deep CDR. And this is the technology that I want to spend a minute because this is the most important part, right? More and more productivity files, and this is even back to like the ransomware. Productivity files are the ones that are not going to be blocked in any organizations, right? Those are the ones that are going to be shared regardless of the source or regardless of the entry point. They're going to be shared among your employees, partners, and so on, right? So from that perspective, you're looking at your docx, PDF, images, and so on, right? Everybody's aware that, oh, macros can be malicious in Office documents, but there are like a lot more, like 15 more objects in those productivity documents that can deliver the same malicious behavior, right? So from that perspective, we're looking at all these files. We're taking the file, break it apart in small pieces, and we remove all the embedded objects that might have active content, right? So think about, I don't know, macros is one example, but you can embed like all the objects. You can embed JavaScript in PDF, right? If you're, let's say, you get like insurance forms and so on, why should we have like JavaScript in a PDF? So those are kind of things we're able to remove, and also we're able to provide you a way deeper analysis on like what has been removed or sanitized, right? So there's a script embedded, being a macro script, being a DVE attack, and so on. We're providing you also the details like what we've seen there, what we removed. And most important part is we're actually doing this recursively as well. So we go through like the entire tree. If you have like a docx in Excel in a PDF, we're going to go through the entire track, and we're going to sanitize each of the files independently. So you're going to have like a safe to consume end-to-end solution as well. And this is the one that actually delivers the most, I don't know, from a security perspective, is the one that actually prevents all these threats, right? This is the most value you can actually get, because this is not relying on detection. This is actually trying to level set, if you want, the functionality in the productivity files, right? You're going to keep your formulas in Excel, you're going to keep your animations in PowerPoint, but at the end of the day, you're going to remove all the embedded objects that you can have scripts attached to it, that you can actually have objects embedded and obfuscated malicious payload in it, right? The moment we're going to move into that one, there's nothing else to detonate. Maybe they managed to hack their way in somehow, and they have the trigger, but they can't deliver the payload to actually detonate or like execute a web shell or open a reverse shell and things like that. And that's the part that DeepSeek actually managed to deliver to you. The fact we're removing all those objects, all those non-conform, let's say, objects in a productivity file, right? And again, you're not going to be aware of all the things that you can actually have in a file. An example is images. Pornography was a popular topic not so long ago. Like there's example like a payload actually hidden in the EXIF in metadata in an image, right? And that's just like, I know, a basic SQL encoder, you're not going to know what's there. But that's the type of information you need to be able to sanitize and remove so you can avoid all these data breaches.
You know, George, I think some of the things you mentioned is phenomenal. I'm just wanted to interject and just say, right, you know, the threats are getting more and more complex, and what Upswatch brings is a complete solution that looks at all those different components. So really, really impressive stuff on how you can protect and secure that data.
Thank you. And one thing actually to mention to your point, right, that the advanced threats are more and more advanced, right? The entire idea there, it's pretty simple, right? Any file or any way you have, let's say, a functionality in PDF or in Office docs and so on, right? That's going to make your life easier as an end user. A threat actor will try and will find a way to use that against you, right? And they're going to try to hide their contents and try to obfuscate and try to bypass your security measures. And one of the most important parts in a hacking incident is the reconnaissance side, right? Where they're trying to identify what's in your environment and how they can bypass that one, right? And then they're going to try to craft that malicious payload, being a productivity file, being depending on the use case and other files and so on, right? But the entire idea is that we need to make sure that we're looking and we're preventing everything end to end. We're not just covering a side of the story.
Absolutely. And from a joint solution, so now let's talk about the solution, right? You know, the fantastic component of this is, you know, as we mentioned, at Cloudian, we basically are a de facto storage platform for all your unstructured data, file and object data, right? You know, we are the on-prem version of the cloud. We have the scale, and to accommodate this data growth, that's where we're seeing a lot of enterprises use Cloudian for various reasons, be it through your S3 applications, be it for your machine data, be it for your unstructured data that is coming from different places, right, across different industries. And security is something that is common irrespective of what industry and verticals you are. If you're in healthcare, if you're in financials, if you're in engineering and EDA, or if you're in legal, security is component, right? And that data, it can be coming from anywhere, and that's where Cloudian storage platforms are used today. Together with OpsWatt, Meta Defender for the storage, along with Cloudian, the solution offers end-to-end security from data protection as well as security against ransomware, malware, viruses, threats, gets you compliance, gives you the visibility, gives you the information that you need to take actions, right? Be it on your infrastructure, be it on your internal components of the files, and gives you, and that is what makes the solution. And this is what is more exciting now, George, is to actually see the solution working. So let's jump into the solution.
Sure. Let's see a quick demo. Ali?
Yeah, I'm ready. Let me quickly just share my screen. Hello, everyone. Okay. So today I'm going to demo the integration between Meta Defender for secure storage and Cloudian Hyperstore object storage. As you've heard before, Cloudian combines file and object storage in one scalable environment. And in order to integrate it with Meta Defender for secure storage, we'll make use of the native S3 compatible API available in Cloudian, as Sanjay mentioned before. For this webinar, I have provisioned my Cloudian demo instance with a bucket called webinar and some test data inside, which you can see right here. Just a couple of files, nothing very large. And let's have a look now at the Meta Defender for secure storage web console. Please note that a tutorial will guide you through the onboarding process the first time you open the application, but in the interest of saving time, I've already deployed and pre-configured an instance. This is the storage units page. Here is where we'll set up an integration with Cloudian. To do that, we need to choose add storage and then fill the necessary details. Storage type will be S3 compatible storage. And then for the service URL is the S3 endpoint that is exposed by Cloudian. You can find this URL by logging into the Cloudian dashboard, hover over your name, and then click security credentials. And you're going to see it listed at the bottom of the page. You can just copy it from here, add it to the service URL. We can give the storage a friendly name so we can easily identify it later. In order to find the access key ID, let's go back to the security credentials page. You will find it listed in the S3 access credentials area, but if no keys are listed, you can choose to create a new one. We'll copy that one as well. Do the same for the secret access key. And these are the credentials that Meta Defender for secure storage will use to retrieve data from Cloudian storage. We have to also select the region and then input the name of the bucket we wish to analyze data from. In our case, this is called webinar. Also, optionally, we can filter only files and folders from within a specific folder by adding the path in this optional folder location input. Everything looks good, so now we have successfully established a connection between Meta Defender for secure storage and Cloudian. Let's have a look at the dashboard. You see that the counter at the top reflects the total number of files processed, the number of threats, potential vulnerabilities, and compliance-related events. In the chart below, you will see detailed processing information for a given period of time. However, before you can see this data, Meta Defender for secure storage needs to start processing files from your storage, and there are multiple ways to do that. One way is to do an instant process by using the right side menu. I've just started one there, and if you click process details, we have a lot more information about what's going on. There is a counter that keeps track of files discovered. There is an overall progress of the scan and the individual progress of a file. Since this is a small storage, the process will take a short time to complete. And when that is done, we'll be redirected to the generated report page. Yeah, this is the report that has been generated after running this process. Let's go back to the dashboard now, and you can see that the data has now appeared in the chart. And if we scroll down, you'll notice that there is a real-time processing option. If you enable this, Meta Defender for secure storage will scan any new file that is created in your storage. Please note that this type of processing will not scan previously created files, but only the new ones. And the files are being discovered by regularly polling your storage for new files. In the other card, there is information about upcoming scheduled processes. This is another way you can process files from your storage. You can set up a schedule that will trigger a scan of all your storage files at the specified time, but we'll talk more about this a little bit later. This is report history. You have some general information about the reports here, like the number of processed files, a summary of the results, the date, and the type of the report. And you can see that this is the report produced by our previously started process. And remember that I mentioned these scheduled processes. In order to set up a schedule, we need to go to the schedule tab, and then here is where we can do it. We can give it a name and then choose a frequency. There are a number of options available. You can do a daily one or a weekly one. Once we have this schedule created, a process will start each day and then scan the whole storage. This is a very effective way to prevent against outbreaks, making sure that you rescan your storage every once in a while. Let's see what kind of information there is in a report. We have the number of allowed and blocked files. You see the start and the stop time, and there is a list of all the processed files there, which you can search or filter to find out more information. When you click on a file, you will be redirected to this page where you can see the hashes of the file, and then you have the multi-scanning report that contains the name of the engine, the version, database version, definition date, and more information about this. Please also notice the data loss risk tab that will contain critical information about any potential compliance violation, like exposed credit card numbers or social security numbers, PIA data, and other sensitive information. If you're not familiar with this, you can learn more by going to opsa.com. And George mentioned earlier the vulnerabilities, which is a very useful tool for checking detailed information about potential file-based vulnerabilities that are detected, with this proprietary technology, which correlates vulnerabilities to software components, product installers, firmware packages, and some other type of binary files. You can also learn more about this by going to our website. This is it. Thank you for your time. This was the demo that I wanted to show.
Thank you very much. As you can see, right, it's very easy to integrate, and it gives you a complete view into your storage at a granular level. You can pick what you want to scan, make sure that you are using the right settings to not only just get the visibility into this, but enforcement of it. So really, really powerful story. George, you want to add anything?
No, I think that's the most important part. It's like a couple of clicks, you have this integrated, and we have a clean, not just integration, but also solution, right? Like back to the discussion where we have that shared responsibility model, right? You guys are taking care of data protection, and it's a couple of clicks to actually deliver that visibility, that security as well with Meta for secure storage.
Exactly. And the benefit of this joint solution is twofold, right? One is you get the best of the breed, right? You get a storage platform that gives you the on-prem S3 compatible object storage, enabling you to scale out distributed storage platform with integrated DR and the ability to grow and meet your capacity demands. Right, it gives you an ability to support your traditional applications through file, as well as the cloud-native applications through S3 APIs, and they are all managed as a single entity. Right, you can do erasure coding, data replications, and get different any nines of data durability. And from an OPSWAT perspective, right, the solution now, as you can saw in the demo, gives you a complete control of your data security, right? It gives you an ability to enforce regulations, right? Like the most powerful thing is like, if there is any personal identifier information, you can mask it. You know exactly what is getting exposed. And now, anytime you have extra control, data, visibility, you can now enforce those things and make sure that you're protected. Together, the solution protects you against external, internal threats, gives you a complete data protection solution, a complete data security solution. It's a shared model, and why not? The solution should be shared too, right? And this is the power of our partnership. This is the power of our solution. George, any closing comments before we take Q&A?
Sure. I think that kind of it's a very good summary. Again, this is a shared responsibility, right? Like, don't rely on the fact that, yes, you have your, let's say, storage team. Again, storage is responsible for certain functionalities in the security story, right? You have your encryption, role-based access, you have the audit, and so on. You need to have also visibility in data. That's what MetaDefender is trying to offer, right? Visibility, like what's the information that's being stored there? If there's anything malicious, how we can prevent that malicious file being actually stored as well. And that's what it's trying to complete the story. That's why we have this, not just an easy integration, but the added value is the fact that we complete the entire file storage solution.
Super. And again, right, simple to use. And that's what the industry is looking for. So with that, let's conclude the session today and see if there's any questions. Jen, back to you.
Perfect. Excellent. I would like to thank George and Sanjay for their time today, and to our audience for joining us as well. The first one that we have is, what data is being shared with OPSWAT or AVs?
So the way it works, you have the solution deployed in your environment right next to Cloudian, right? And it's important to know that this functionality or like this solution actually works in offline environment as well. Nothing is being shared out. No information is being sent to us, not even hashes of the files. No information is being sent to the AV. So for the multi-scanning part, we OEM those pretty much SDKs from each AV, and we have the functionality wrapped in our product for us to be able to do the analysis in your environment. Again, no information goes out, not even hashes. We don't share it. We don't collect any information, or we don't share any information with our AVs either.
Perfect. Thanks, George. Another question from the audience. Why use S3 compatible object storage versus traditional SAN or NAS?
That's a good question, right? And the answers are multifold and multifaceted. The first one is the reason why S3 object storage, as I was saying, is twofold. One is there's no doubt today that the amount of data and the explosion of data and the growth of data is unprecedented, right? And we know for a fact that your traditional SAN and NAS does not have the ability to meet some of those storage growth needs. And for accommodating that exponential data growth, you need a storage platform that can scale, and that can scale limitlessly, right? So the reason why S3, because S3 APIs have become the de facto standard for an object storage solution. So being a de facto standard with S3 APIs, being an object storage that can limitlessly scale, makes it an ideal platform for storing a lot of data. The other thing is, unlike file systems and NAS, object storage is a flat hierarchical system, right? No accessible addressable space. It basically has rich metadata that is very conducive to some of the factors that when you're trying to do enhanced data management. So combined with all those things, the industry is moving towards this, right? And that's why you should probably look at a platform like Cloudian that offers native implementation of S3 APIs with the ability to scale and all the robust features that we talked about today.
And then another question that came in that's very similar to that. All storage makers say their scalable? How is this different?
And the reason why it's proven, right? Like I said, object storage is a flat namespace, right? And the concept is you basically are now storing this as blobs, like binary objects, and you don't have the limitations of your file system. Right, you don't have a limitations where you now have the ability to have custom metadata or metadata-rich storage addressable space that allows you to now tell exactly what's in there, right? And the architecture, right? When you talk about scale-out architecture and it's a global namespace, you want to make sure that you're not hitting the limitations of scale. Like, you'll have a lot of distributed file system-based NAS boxes, but the way they do about it is build a NAS tree, right? But you eventually run into file system limitations. So the answer still remains there is a reason why object storage is getting more and more traction, and that's because of the ability to scale.
Perfect, thank you. Another question, what happens if a file is deemed malicious?
George?
Might be for George.
Yes, thank you. So it's a matter of like how you want to configure the product, right? We have a couple of like remediation options there, and maybe Alan can explain a bit more on those ones, but overall it's something like this, right? It's a matter of like what you want to do with that file. In general, malicious is something you define what actually means to be malicious. Let's say if you have like 30 anti-malware vendors, if one is cited as malicious, is malicious or false policy, right? This is something that you want to like store and report it to maybe like your third team to look further into it, or you want to sanitize it and allow that safe consume content to your end user so it's not going to impact his productivity, right? However, if there's some that's definitely malicious, we have the ability to like remove it. We have the ability to be very, let's say, proactive on that one, right? And just delete the file. Maybe, Alan, you can explain the three remediation steps, let's say, in this flow.
Yeah, thank you, George. Just what I wanted to add is that there are multiple configuration options for this. One way is, as George mentioned, an aggressive way is to just delete the file and keep only the sanitized version. George mentioned before, deep CDR. That one gives you a safe to use version of the file, which you can continue to use and remove the original one. Another option is to encrypt the original one so that you keep it there in case this was a false positive or something, but encrypted such that only through the Meta Defender for Secure Storage interface you can decrypt it and read the content. And a more safe approach is to keep both versions of the files and maybe do your workflow after that, move one of them to a separate bucket and so on.
Perfect. Thank you. Another question. This sounds great. What's the next step? We might be interested in the solution. I think this is probably for both of you.
The simple step is get in touch. You see the emails out here. Just send an email or get in touch with, go to Cloudian.com. Get in touch with your local sales team or send an email to Cloudian, and we'll be able to get you the information and work with you to identify how we can help you.
Exactly same thoughts here as well. Like, reach out to us. We can provide you like more deep down dive demo. We can provide you trials for POC. I think in general, whenever we go through a POC, it's kind of like prospects are highly convinced this is the solution they need, right? So from that perspective, just try it out. Try to understand the value out of that one, and then it's going to be a very easy one to actually explain to your managers and actually use in your infrastructure.
And then for the sake of time, this is probably going to be our last question. So the question is, deep CDR removes any macro from a file, but what if that macro was created by the file owner?
Right, this is the part where we're not making distinction, right? Like, it's not a detection mechanism. Doesn't matter. The file owner might have been the threat actor if he's the owner of the file necessarily. Right? Like, at the end of the day, for us, it's very important for us to have that, again, level set. We're removing all the embedded objects. Now, as Alin mentioned, like, if you actually need that original file, the macros and so on, there is a way for you to go and retrieve that one afterwards, right? If you want to have that usability or like that flow in your infrastructure as well. But it's a matter of like, you want to be able to prevent, let's say, a lot of the ransomware is being delivered to macros, right? Maybe you're not going to have, let's say, out of 1,000 files containing macros, it's enough one of them to be ransomware. Why do you want to allow that, right? It's easier just like remove them and then if it's actually needed, go back and retrieve it. I think for us, it's very important to note, again, it's not just about the macros. Those are the most popular ones, and they're actually one of the most used functionalities in the productivity file as well. But that is still one of the main attack vectors, just because it's popular and people are afraid of like blocking it or removing them, right? I can tell you for sure this is one of the most high growth technology for us, just because we're able to offer that functionality that, again, removes the risk. Like pretty much all your end users are going to consume a safe content. There's no risk on their end. Regardless how much you're going to train them, they're still going to open a fake invoice or something or enable macros in a productivity file that came by email, shared, and so on, right? That's the part that I think is most important here, right? Just remove them from the beginning, allow them to consume the safe copy. If it's actually needed from time to time, we have like mechanisms to retrieve the original copy. But whenever you retrieve them, maybe you want to do like additional checks to make sure there's nothing malicious there. And again, as I showed in the presentation, you actually can see the macro content, right? You can see the script, and if it's something, okay, I wrote this content, I need this one, here's my script, you can compare it, not a problem, you can release the original file.
Perfect. So excellent. I'd like to thank George and Sanjay for their time today and our audience for joining us as well.